when you talk to your students who are going to China and building things, what is it that draws them to getting involved in manufacturing?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that it's much more satisfying, fundamentally, I think, to see thousands of your thing than one of them. Yeah. I think at the Media Lab also, we have a lot of, we have a consortium of members that are basically big companies that come and they say, I want that, can I have a few of these? And we can. But now what I'd like to be able to do, even if we don't go into full-blown manufacturing, is to be able to, create enough so that we can do real trials. And I think a lot of people in the sort of deploy part, whether they're medical sensors or gadgets, would love to test it on a couple thousand people, because that's a whole different set of data that you collect about somebody than just testing it in a small focus group. So there's a bunch of reasons why it makes sense. But I think the main thing that I've heard from the kids that have gone is just the inspiration of designing for manufacturers. So there's Bunny on his blog was talking about this $12 retail price cell phone with 5 megabytes and MP3 player and OLED screen and all that. I mean, you can't design a $12 cell phone without deeply understanding the equipment that it's being manufactured on. Right. And I think that, our students just, the idea of just understanding and designing directly on the manufacturing equipment feels so much more real than just fabricating a prototype.
Right. So what do you think is the role of expertise in that? Is there going to emerge a single person who understands the design and prototyping and manufacturing of hardware and the deployment of software to work on it? Or is this again going to become sort of a stack of modules of expertise?
I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think it's, I do think there are certain layers that are going to collapse. I do think that understanding manufacturing is going to be key to design, just like understanding the internet has become key to running a company. And that so that will bundle. But then, to your point, you do have modularity, and I think the software people. But what's interesting is you can create layers of modularity, but if you get rid of the unnecessary complexity, it actually allows you to understand more. So, for instance, Ruby on Rails, I would argue, probably increased the number of people who felt they had expertise in making websites, because it made it easier. Although it does layer the stuff and simplifies it. And I think part of this, and this is kind of the Ruby on Rails design principle, is that the default sort of works. Mm-hmm. So if you could create it so that the hardware components, even though they're components, the default sort of works. So you don't actually need to understand it completely. You just need to understand how to interface with it. And a lot of tools, that's enough to actually be able to use it. And so I think that in a way, for the designer, it will become easy to kind of get your arms around it. And I think it's still tricky, because when you sit on the factory floor in Shenzhen, they're using, plastic soda bottles and stuff to like make the stuff work, and it's still not that shiny. It's still pretty improvised. But and so I think there is a lot of deep expertise once you get into the nitty gritty. But that's true with all of our, like every Ruby gem, there's a lot of expertise stuck in that thing, and only a few people need to know it in order for everybody else to benefit from that.
Right. I think this is sort of a thread that's been lost in a lot of the conversation about hardware, and it frustrates people who see themselves as starting with first principles and going into kind of a scientific approach to developing some new device or new piece of hardware or new machine. That we are approaching a level where it's easy to feel like an expert in hardware. It's easy to buy the modules for very little money and sort of like tinker them together into a prototype. But that is what I think separates the people who are making a novel and fun, iPhone accessory from people who are doing something really impactful in solar power generation or wind power generation or something like that, is the ability to start with something really basic and sort of understand that and go up from there and make an advancement in the basic level.
And I won't name names, but a lot of internet startups start out by launching something that's actually a prototype, and then they hit the wall once they realize that they need to now rewrite the thing as a production system that's scaling, that's using Hadoop and everything like that, and that's a completely different kind of thing. And I think it's similar in manufacturing. I mean, I think in a way, manufacturing is a production level thing of, and I think there are similarities in software, and also that every level of scale has a different level of expertise, and the number of people who understand it becomes smaller and smaller, and I think that's just that is true. But the neat thing though is companies like PCH and AQS and others are trying to fill that gap by creating an interface, and it'll be interesting to see how successful they are.